See where I put things I create at. Not for the Weaker Sex by David J. Rowbottom. Volume 4. How to Get Back on the Horse. But I don't want to go out. So your mates drag you, moping and slouching, out of the house for a night of relaxation and frolics. You have no interest in doing anything, but you haven't any fight left in you to argue. You go to the pub, but claim repeatedly that you're not staying all night. You stay all night, but make a big deal of stating that you're definitely not going to a club. You go to a club, but insist that you're not interested in chatting to girls. You get very drunk and rely on your natural homing instinct to ensure that you wake up in familiar surroundings. Then suddenly one day this happens. You drag your mates out. The preparation. After some time away from the dating scene, a night on the town cannot be rushed into. Fashions, styles, music, and chat-up lines all alter over time. I had to factor in that the things that trapped my previous woman may now be as repellent as slapping her ass and asking her, "How would you like your eggs in the morning, fertilized or unfertilized?" For all I knew, the timeless "get your coat, you've copped" no longer secured a guaranteed grope outside Abracababra. So I decided to keep things simple. I decided to not speak until spoken to, and above all else, to dress well. So I went clothes shopping for the first time in ever. And I don't mean shopping for undies or a polo shirt. I mean shopping for clothes that might aid in the entrapment of the opposite sex. Clothes to accent my best features. But what were my best features? I make a time-saving decision which, to this day, I believe to be clever and wise, but not one soul I've told since thinks it is an idea of value. I find a clothes outlet which has a mannequin roughly approximating my height and body type, and buy the clothes they have hung on it. The whole outfit, even the socks and shoes. I realize that this assumes the 17-year-old girl who dressed the window mannequin wasn't on her last day and taking the piss. But I did show a little discretion and went for the one, and there were many, that I liked the most. I think I looked okay, and unlike the mannequin, I could move. The evening arrived and I showered, shaved and preened myself to the highest standard I can ever remember. This is because, and I know how weak this makes me sound, the ex used to tell me how to dress, not directly but using those time-honored niggles. "You're wearing that, are you? So you're going with the goatee tonight, are you? Aren't they the shoes you wear for work? Do you need a t-shirt under a normal shirt? Won't you be too warm? Surely you think she, the ex, must have found me bearable once. Why didn't she, the ex, just tell me what to wear all the time so at least I could relax and enjoy the night safe in the knowledge that she, the ex, was not squirming with embarrassment at my flat cap and cravat? Now, left to my own devices, I look exactly like a shop mannequin, and my mood is good. I'm too old to grasp the concept of preloading, so I have one more glass of milk and another slice of dry bread to line my stomach. Writer's note, just as my mother always told me to. And look at the time. It's 6 o'clock. A touch early for the arranged 8 o'clock meeting time. I realize that this is because I have no perception of the time it takes for one man to get ready to go out for one night. It is completely alien to me not to have to wait around downstairs watching Coast and listening to mysterious rituals and strange noises taking place upstairs that are required if woman desires to make man wait. Noises such as electrical equipment buzzing and crackling, snips, rips and tears that make no sense. Spending an age making the dodgy floorboard in the spare room groan and creak and groan a creak endlessly, when you are certain there is nothing more in there than a box of books and an unused cross-trainer. No mirrors, no clothes, no makeup, no hair curlers or straighteners. Could it be that she is ready too early and is simply sitting there and creaking the board to waste time? Neil Oliver would be doing his utmost to make me care about an old abandoned tin mine just near the Minack Theatre in Cornwall, but all I could ever do was scream in my head, "What is she doing?" Now that I'm single, I find myself scrubbed and prepared in such good order that I have plenty of time to watch 2 episodes of Coast and set the Freeview box to record Match of the Day and a Sylvester Stallone movie that she, the ex, would have previously chastised me for recording because it was a rubbish and wasting a valuable 2-hour slot on the gargantuan 250 gigabyte hard drive. I remember I used to wait nervously for something to go wrong upstairs. There was always something, some unforeseen snag, which would waste more time and would somehow be my fault. "Everything keeps switching off," she would yell, and I'd run upstairs and push the reset button on the circuit breaker I had lovingly purchased so the house didn't burn down. "Why does it keep switching off?" she would bark. "Because you're overloading the socket," I'd reply patiently. "What's the point if I can't use my things?" "Well, it's to protect the equipment," I'd say. "These things must use a lot of power. Can't you plug them in one at a time as you need them?" And that was it. The wrong thing to say. "I need my curlers and straighteners to warm up while I use my hairdryer," she would bark. "I don't know why I bother. I don't want to go out now. I'm going to call them and cancel." It was easier to simply remove the life-saving RCD, and downstairs Neil Oliver had been replaced by the lovely Professor Alice Roberts, explaining the significance of a bone found while reworking the A39 between Truro and Falmouth. And still, I would wait. I'd go to the front door occasionally on the off chance she would hear me and hurry up. The booked taxi time would come and go. "It's taxi time," I'd shout up. "Is it here?" she'd reply. "No," I would have to admit with a bowed head and a sigh. Then I'd hear the beep of the horn. "It's here," I'd shout from the front door. "Okay, nearly ready. Ask him to wait, please." She'd gently reply. Beat myself with it. But now I'm single, and I'm ready with plenty of time to spare. Lots and lots of time. Surely there's a balance. Finally, and precisely when you expect it, writer's note 10 minutes after you rang up and they confirmed it was just coming around your corner, the taxi beeps and you walk to it and get in. "All right, mate," you say. "The turf in, please." The night. A night full of promise. A night where anything can happen. Watch out, ladies. I'm back. We started out at the local because, well, I'm not sure why. Why do we always start at the local? If we went directly into town, writer's note, town is night out talk for the largest metropolis next to your actual town. This can range from the adjacent village, which has 2 pubs compared to your 1, or to the nearest city. We would double our chances of meeting some members of the opposite sex. As it is, the local is full of grown men sitting at the bar chatting up Mandy, the hopelessly inefficient barmaid who is the only reason the place is full of grown men sitting at the bar. "Take one for yourself, Mandy, love," is easily the most spoken phrase of the evening, run close, but not beaten by the classic, "I need a piss." No local, however, is only full of grown men. There are always 2 pretty girls who smile coquettishly at men old enough to be their grandfather, who inevitably buy them a drink. For this drink, the men will receive a good 10 minutes, or flirtatious banter, until the girls excuse themselves for a toilet break. Upon their return, they smile coquettishly at different men old enough to be their grandfather, who inevitably buy them a drink. For this drink, the men will receive, etc. I sometimes wonder if this is a plan concocted by women, a secret club that meets online and designates pubs fairly according to a certain radius from their abode on a rotation basis. The winners, announced each Sunday night at an award ceremony, are the girls who can show the highest blood alcohol level and produce their bank details proving no money was spent on the night out, plus photographic evidence of their full purse at the start and end of the night. Perhaps they are like ice cream vans where it is frowned upon if you enter another's territory. So, after buying Chloe and Rebecca a drink and spending a wonderful 10 minutes believing I still have it, me and the lads continued to drink at pub prices, writer's note. Possibly the only reason people go to the local first, until about 10 o'clock. That's the time when the brightest spark in our group comes up with his cunning plan. If we order a taxi now, we'll get to the club before closing and avoid the rush. Even though, if sober, we would realize how ridiculous this idea is, we jump at the drunken chance to not have to queue. Once "It'll be 10 minutes, lads, taxi is booked, we have to decide which club will be under our attack this evening." We choose not based on the type of music, the range of beers, the quality of service, or the excellent facilities, but on the recommendation of one of the lads who got off with a lass in there last week. Writer's note. Using that theory, I would only ever buy my pears from my local supermarket because I had a particularly delicious one from there in 1992. I did, and if I'm being honest, I do. So, a good plan then. The most annoying part of being in the queue is surprisingly not the queuing. It's having to watch Chloe and Rebecca and countless other semi-naked women on a freezing Manchester night in October. Writer's note. Perhaps the lavishly applied makeup and fake tan is mixed in with a little deep heat for warmth. Flirtatiously slime their way to the front of the line and worm their way into the club ahead of all the men and normal women. No one complains, though, because we all know that if we were working the door, we'd let them in too. Man is weak. Once I reached my turn in the queue, I had to decide a strategy for paying, and I don't mean cash or card. I mean what comment, if any, I was going to make when I discovered that the fee for entry was £1. Writer's note. Fill in the amount which made you feel like you were being financially abused and move on. I knew it wasn't going to be cheap, but £1 is a lot of fucking money. Once in, I found myself in what could only be described as a cattle market with optics. Very different from my days at the Banshee or Atmosphere, where dancing and fun seemed to be the main reason for attending. The rules seemed to have changed. Small groups of women stood around the edge of the room while the larger groups boogied. Writer's note, even the word boogied is now out of date, on the dance floor in the middle. They all danced a kind of dance which was designed to repel men who had a brain and could see it was a group of girls out for a good time. Writer's note, in the old-fashioned sense, and draw in men who thought it would be funny, sexy, or provocative to break the wall and join in. Each of these usurpers was sent away with their tail between their legs at having been pushed away or laughed at until they got the point. I quickly learned that it was man's job to regularly circumnavigate the room on an inner orbit. Like all the other circling men, I would make a mental note of the women who caught my eye, in the hope that next time around I might catch their eye. After one full circumference, I found myself back at the bar for another bout of biting my tongue, as a host of pretty girls and more aggressive men got served ahead of me. Eventually I handed over £1. Writer's note. Fill in the last number you paid for a weak beer in a dingy club, and set off once more around the inner ring road. The more beer I imbibed, the longer the list of women I looked at and who looked back at me became. And then I locked onto one, and she reciprocated. The double lock. It was time for a snap decision. Is she of a high enough quality to stop and talk to now? Or should I continue on and complete my circuit? It was a conundrum. There may be better ahead, but she may be gone, or worse, being slobbered over by a buffoon, other than me when I next come around. Writer's note. Now, to the girls, this must sound very misogynistic, but think about it. It's built into every man who ever hunted. Do you go for the easy kill? The weak little limp, stringy-meated catch lurking at the back of the herd? Or do you forgo that simple meal for the strapping, meaty, juicy, athletic, well-tanned beast somewhere further up? It's really not our fault. I decided to walk over and introduce myself. The morning after, I remember waking up but not opening my eyes. Something wasn't quite right. My nipples were sore, and the duvet smelled different. I tried to work out why my nipples would be sore. I was lying on my side, that much I could tell. I slowly opened one eye and saw bedroom furniture I did not recognize. Either someone had broken in and replaced all of my stuff, or I was not at home. I then heard a gentle snoring behind me. I blinked and turned ever so slowly. My nipples grazed the sheet and I winced slightly. They really were very sore. I could now see the ceiling and knew I was not at home. No one would break in, raise the ceiling by 3 feet, and then cover it in woodchip wallpaper. Not if they had to do the furniture as well. There simply wouldn't have been time. I heard a grunt and a sniff, and I snapped my eyes shut. I wondered what the time was. I remembered seeing a clock on the bedside cabinet before I gently rolled over. I glanced back and saw it was flashing 0 o'clock. Brilliant, I thought. Can't set a digital clock, and woodchip on the ceiling. It was like I was in a Jarvis Cocker lyric. I deemed the time unimportant. The important thing, clearly, was to get out of here without having to look anyone in the eye. But how? I've got myself in a proper fix, and on my first night out, too. Think, man. Hang on, I thought. What am I doing? What if she's marvelous? What if she's the one? The woman of my dreams. I should sneak a peek. After all, her face was only another 90 degrees away. She's still snoring. That's a good sign, I think. Snoring equals sleeping. No one snores when they're awake. Do they? Of course they don't. Oh, I'm getting confused. Being illogical. Of course no one snores if they are awake. I noticed my naked arms over the top of the duvet, took a deep breath and turned slowly another 90 degrees. Damn, she's got her back to me. To run or not to run? I eased back to the ceiling view to think. I tried to calculate just how embarrassing it will be if she wakes up right now. She stopped snoring. Perhaps she was awake. She could be pretending to sleep until I go. She may be lying there wrangling with exactly the same issues as I am, not wanting to see if she landed a hog. How rude. I wondered if her nipples were sore. Of course they weren't. That wasn't one of my moves. It must have been one of hers, though, because mine felt like they were bleeding. I started to wonder to myself if I was completely naked, and realized I genuinely couldn't tell. Writer's note. Try this at home. Next time you're in bed. Without moving a muscle, try to feel how clothed you are. It's impossible. For all you know, you could be bollock naked or dressed in a cocktail gown. It's a very disturbing sensation. I had to look under the sheets. This was important. If I were fully clothed, I could, in a desperate situation, leap up and simply run away like the coward I am. So I lifted. G-E-N-T-O-A-N-D. Naked. Damn. Okay. I eased one leg out of the bed and then the second. Then I slid my body out so I was on my knees. I noticed a full-length mirror behind me and saw my belly dangling down, and even at this most inopportune moment, I couldn't stop myself sucking it in as far as it would go. I shook my head in wonderment at my narcissistic madness and set off on my knees to find my clothes. I see a chair at the bottom of the bed, and on it, glory be, I see clothes. The kind of clothes one might find on a shop mannequin. Well, jeans, check. Shirt, check. Socks, I was still wearing them. I bowed my head in shame and sighed loudly. She moved, and the bedroom was filled with the crinkly turbulence only a new duvet cover can cause, so I froze. On all fours. Naked. Apart from socks. If she wakes up now, I thought, it would be the most embarrassing moment since my dad asked why there were pubic hairs on his shaving mirror. I waited in fear, as still as a noticed spider. And then she snored again. Phew, that was close. I needed to get the hell out of there. Now, I thought, where are my boxers? Oh no, where are my boxers? I tried to remember what color they were, but who remembers shit like that at a time like this? I considered giving my local gentleman's outfitters a call and asking them if Chardonnay was available so I could ask her what color boxers she had dressed mannequin number 3 in, but was certain they would be shut at this time on a Sunday morning. Whatever this time actually is. I started to sweat a little. Another thing to add to the list of reasons, I did not want this woman to wake up. Assuming it is a woman. Why would I think that? What would make that pop into my head? Am I gay? I realized I was losing it, and the only thing I could safely do now was to leave my boxers for her, writer's note or him to find and keep, as a memento of this tragic occasion. I couldn't do that, could I? I racked my brain to remember where I was when I or someone else removed them. I worked through my time-honored undressing pattern. Shirt, jeans, socks, boxers. A tried and tested system. Except my socks are still on. That means the whole system had been compromised. She must have done it then, writer's note or he. That probably means she, writer's note he, tossed them away. They could be anywhere. And then you see them. On the top of a pile of clothes. And on top of those boxes on the top of a pile of clothes is another thing. A terrible thing. The worst thing I could ever imagine seeing at a time like this. A fucking cat! Fast asleep for now and heaving heavily with the crotch of my undergarment not more than an inch away from its pink little fucking nose. Serves it right, I thought, as I snuck quietly by, praying that the floor was constructed of well-seated MDF sheets and not those old squeaky tongue and groove floorboards. I saw that the door was open and made a decision. A bold and decisive choice. I was going to stand up and march very quietly out of the room. If she, writer's note, I'll stop now, woke up, I would simply say a cheerful good morning just off to the loo. If she didn't wake up, I'd sneak out of the house like the little worm I was. I got to the top of the stairs without a human grunt or a feline purr and pulled my shirt over my head. As my head popped out of the top, I saw the toilet and considered, just for a moment, whether I needed a wee. My brain despaired to the point I could almost hear it giving up, and I slipped my jeans on. I noticed that the staircase was in the middle of the building, so calculated that I was perhaps in a small terraced house. I'd been in plenty of those, so I considered what the floor plan might be. At the bottom of the stairs there would be a living room on one side and a kitchen on the other. The kitchen back door would probably lead to a backyard with a possible locked gate. That equaled 2 obstacles. The living room would have a door that led directly onto the street and freedom. That's 1 obstacle, assuming she didn't have a special place for her keys. I could only hope she had left them in the door. But before any of this door key nonsense, I still had to negotiate the staircase. 13 of the little buggers. Each and every one of them a potential squeaking siren, easily loud enough to wake a human, but definitely loud enough to wake a cat. I considered the merits of striding a couple of steps at a time and decided I could probably do it. It would decrease the chances of standing on a creaky step. If I did 3 at a time, that would be only 4 steps I'd have to stand on. 4 at a time, and it would be only 3. I congratulated myself on my simple maths with such a scrambled brain and decided on 3 steps at a time. 4 would be possible, but it would mean landing on a step slightly heavier, and that could turn any creak into a groan. Writer's note. Scientifically speaking, a creak reads at between 5 and 10 decibels, whereas a groan is anywhere between 10 and 30, and that could be disastrous. I imagined looking up at the top of the stairs to find a disappointed woman of unknown beauty, holding a cat, with the smell of my groin still in its nostrils, staring down at me with my legs straddling 4 steps and shaking like a newborn deer. 3 steps at a time, and a well-constructed staircase meant that I reached the bottom without incident. I sighed audibly as my feet sank into the lovely plush carpet. I saw a kitchen to my right and a living room to my left and congratulated myself on my knowledge of the floor plan of an average terraced house. I noticed that the kitchen door led into a utility room, and this, consequently, would lead onto a whole unknown quantity of booby traps and trip hazards before I even got to the back door and the subsequent nightmares beyond. The living room looked tricky too, with its myriad of unknown obstacles and difficulties, all wrapped up in the hazy darkness of pre-dawn light, edging its way through the tiny crack of a pair of good, thermally lined curtains. But I decided it was the lesser of the 2 obstacles and went left. It became immediately apparent that the curtains were indeed very thick and allowed only minimal shafts of light through. I remember wishing I had a prism with me. I'd just been reading about Newton's experiment in 1665, where he held it up to a single shaft of light and discovered the spectrum. But now really wasn't the time. Writer's note. Above is a pictorial representation of the moment just before Newton's assistant, William Whiston, pulled the chair away as Sir Isaac was about to sit down. If he hadn't discovered gravity the weekend before while skiving in his garden, he would certainly have got it on this occasion. As I waited for my eyes to adjust to the darkness, I heard a sound. It sounded human. I tried to ignore it and wondered how I would put on my shoes in this dark without falling over. And then it hit me. Shoes. Where the fuck were my shoes? I breathed in to let out a sigh but stopped as I heard another human noise. A gentle snore. Shit, I thought. There's someone down here. Then I heard a second noise over the top of the first. That makes two people. What the fuck is going on? Who are these people? Who has friends to stay over when you've copped with the best-dressed mannequin in the club? Writer's note. Try and guess which I was on this particular night. I gathered my thoughts and silently decided a recalculation was required. I was already without boxers. Did I actually need shoes? I suppose she could sell them on eBay as recompense for me scarpering. They were only worn once. They weren't cheap either. Could be sold as 100% hit rate with the ladies. Writer's note or... But I could be miles from home and hadn't even checked to see if I had any money for a taxi. I might need shoes. But I also needed to get out of here. I decided to just go. Sans boxers and shoes. Then, in the dim light, I noticed, beside an empty pizza box, a shoeless foot. Where there's a shoeless foot, I thought, there must be a household policy to take off one's shoes at the door. Now, I prayed, if there is a God, this would be an excellent time to prove it. Any God would do. Line up deities. My soul is yours for the taking. There was a shoeless boy right here who really needed your help. I made a promise to be a good Christian/Jew/Muslim/Hindu/Buddhist/Jedi and started towards the door. And there they were. Hallelujah. Come on, God, I prayed. You're on a roll now. Don't let me down. You know what I want. That's why you're God. Please make the key be in the door. Please see. Yes. The key was nestled in the lock. Come on. God, I thought, was good. I picked up my shoes and turned the key as slowly and quietly as possible. As the light of a sunny morning beamed religiously around into the room, I ran as fast as I could. I didn't convert to any religious order, because none of the gods made it clear to me who it was who helped. Show me a sign, and I'm all yours. Writer's note. Walk with me as I take you through a visual representation of an idiot's nightmare. See where I put things I create at.